The House is back in session for the first time since the spring election. Premier Stephen McNeil and his Liberals have a slimmer majority, but when it comes to labor negotiations, they are showing no signs of backing down.
Today, he told reporters that the voters have spoken.
Well, listen, this is part of the democratic process. They have the right to express themselves in a peaceful way. They've done that. Nova Scotians in a general election have the right to express themselves. They've done that. We'll continue to move forward. I'm appreciative of the second mandate in the majority government, and we'll continue to move forward and provide the government that Nova Scotia elected.
So McNeil won't be changing his tune in regards to unions, but we did get a sense today of what his government's priorities are for the session.
This afternoon, Arthur LeBlanc delivered his first speech from the throne as the new lieutenant governor. The speech made reference to the election that created a new political dynamic and included a promise to do more to fix the problems associated with the key issue during the campaign, health care.
This spring, Nova Scotians voiced concerns about challenges in healthcare. We know that more mental health supports are needed. Access to primary care must improve, and wait times are too long. Government heard these concerns and will respond.
Stephen McNeil's second mandate will pick up where it left off by tabling a budget next week. That's because last spring's fiscal plan died when the election was called. And we also know what legislation to expect during the session. In terms of new laws, the government will table a new cyberbullying law, plus a replacement for the Incompetent Persons Act, both of which had been struck down by the courts. We're also expecting some amendments. Those include changes to the Workers' Compensation Act, so first responders with PTSD can access benefits, amending legislation regarding the implementation of pre-primary, and modifying the Municipal Government Act and HRM Charter so municipalities will be more accountable for expense reporting.
So that's the agenda, but the opposition says it's waiting for more details, particularly when it comes to health care.
Gary, what do you make of the throne speech?
I would say it's a sorry piece of obfuscatory nothingness.
Look, Nova Scotians send all of us a strong message. They want us focused on healthcare, doctor recruitment, mental health. There's nothing new in here. It's all rehashed promises that we've heard many times before.
So lots of labor leaders on hand for today's protests at the legislature. I'll talk to one of them, the national president of Unifor. That's our newsmaker just after 6:30. Well, it was both a festive and feisty mood at Province House today as MLAs returned for the fall sitting of the legislature. Protesters gathered outside to voice their displeasure of Bill 148, which was proclaimed this summer and imposes a wage pattern on thousands of public employees. Jerry Diaz is the president of Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union. You are in Nova Scotia and Halifax today to attend the opening of the legislature. Why did you feel you had to come here for that?
Well, because Stephen McNeil and his Bill 164 is just about as foolish as it gets. I mean, attacking private sector workers, 75,000 private sector workers, attacking nurses, attacking teachers. He's attacking some of the more low-paid workers within the economy. If you take a look, he's attacking janitors, healthcare workers, it's just ridiculous. I mean, you're not going to move a province forward by suppressing wages. I mean, he's doing a heck of a job at it.
He does say he is trying to do that. He's trying to put the province on a better financial footing. And if you look at government expenditures, salaries for some of the provincial government departments and the staff thereof, it's a huge price tag for this provincial government in a small province that has a tough time with the economy as it is.
Well, this is also a province that had a $130 million surplus last year, so it's doing quite well. So the argument that somehow suppressing wages, suppressing purchasing power is the ticket to putting yourself on more financial footing doesn't make any argument. You can't attack teachers, healthcare workers. Look, in the last legislature, who did he go after? He took away funding from long-term care facilities, attacked our seniors. You can't take money out of the healthcare system and think that somehow that's the ticket to building a better economy. So I will argue his policies have been a disaster. So now he went from a huge majority to a majority, but a small minority. He only won by a few hundred votes.
Okay, well, you raised that question. The election campaign was a large part of it was about the wage package and how civil servants in this province are being treated at the negotiating table, and yet he returned with a majority government. So does he not have a moral and democratic right to proceed in this policy that he's talked about for so long?
Well, he has a democratic right. The only problem is he's attacking free collective bargaining, and every constitutional decision that has came down in the last several years
but the government has been at the table.
Has been said that you can't mess with free collective bargaining. So he's unilaterally disregarding the legislation or the Supreme Court rulings because he believes he's over and above that. And I'll also argue that his majority today is much smaller than it was. His popular vote is much smaller than it was. So he's running as if he got 100% support from citizens of Nova Scotia when we know clearly that didn't happen.
Well, nobody gets 100%, do they? But
no.
You're referring to the BC case, aren't you? Where this fight, this similar
Saskatchewan.
fight went to the Supreme Court. Where do you see this going vis-a-vis this province?
Well, there's no question it's heading to the Supreme Court. Brad Wall tried it. Christy Clark tried it. I mean, several governments have tried it. But here's the other piece of this. He's going in the opposite direction from the rest of the country. You've got Ontario, a Liberal government. Stephen McNeil's not a Liberal. He runs under the Liberal banner, but he's definitely a far-right Conservative. You've got the Ontario government going to $15 an hour minimum wage. You've got Alberta going to $15 an hour minimum wage. You got BC will be heading to $15 an hour minimum wage. You got the federal government that's talking about increasing social programs. You got the federal government that eliminates 377, 525, and you got Stephen McNeil swimming in the opposite direction.
But do unions across this country look at what's happening in Nova Scotia and the tough stance that the provincial government has taken against unions and say, wonder if that might be visiting our doorstep sometime soon, a future government someplace in another province?
The tail's not going to wag the dog. Stephen McNeil doesn't have that much power across the country, that's for sure. As a matter of fact, he's isolating himself quite well. So his policies aren't going to resonate. It's been tried by a lot bigger players than him, including Stephen Harper, the last prime minister that is now obviously defeated. So I'm not concerned about Stephen McNeil's vision somehow going across the country, but he has to be cognizant of the fact that the vision of Canada is now coming across Nova Scotia and he's swimming in the wrong direction.
Sir, good to talk to you today. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Take care.